So I've tried every weapon in the finals season 8, and I'm going to be ranking them all from C tier all the way up to S tier. And just in case Embark ends up buffing or nerfing some weapons, I'll try to update the pinned comment below to tell you what I think of the weapon after its changes. As always, there's timestamps below if you want to find a specific weapon, so let's get started. Despite everything, SA-12 still remains a top contender for heavies even after the nerfs it's had. If you don't know how to use it, the gun will feel like you're firing rubber bullets, but in the hands of a seasoned pro, this becomes one of the best weapons in the game with competitive time to kills and exceptional sustain that can rival even the LMGs in team fights. And because Winchclaw is still one of the community's favorite picks on heavy, SA-12 will continue to be one of the best options, especially for high-ranked players looking to compete at the top level. I can't really put it anywhere other than the S tier. Flamethrower hasn't really had any changes in a bit, and while it is still decent in many situations, the thing has a few drawbacks. If this were just a casual tier list, this weapon would probably be in a high tier such as A, but since we're taking into account more than just casual play, this weapon does unfortunately fall off in many areas. The need for a CQC weapon just isn't really something that is super helpful right now, and all the other close range options do have better time to kills. I'll give it some points for being a counter to Riot Shield and how easy it is to use, but if we're considering all the ranks, I can't place it any higher than B tier at the moment. While the Deagles have been a little overshadowed by the Titan recently, and having recently lost their title as the best ranged heavy weapon due both to nerfs and the introduction of that new Revolver, they're still quite insane in the hands of a skilled player and can quickly humble anyone who underestimates them. Their ability to be good in both the longer mid-range and close range makes them very versatile, and the only real downside to this weapon is that you have to make sure that you hit your headshots with them. And it does have better sustained fighting than the Titan, so that's another point towards it. If you can reach the top of their skill ceiling, I would say that these are also S tier. Sledge is, in my opinion, a bit of a sleeper pick this season because, while it's not quite as powerful as it used to be, it's still extremely good and can sometimes feel downright oppressive in the hands of a good player. Both Goose Sledge and Winch Sledge are popular options right now and can compete in almost all levels of play except for maybe the literal highest levels of the game. Definitely a slept on weapon that's going to go into the A tier for me. Okay, let's be real for a second here. How has the spear not gotten more buffs or a rework yet? This weapon has consistently been one of the worst heavy weapons in the game since it came out, and outside of power shift, there's really no justification for using it over the Sledgehammer. I just want to know why. I want the spear to be good. I want every weapon in the game to be good, but spear just can't really compete both because of its bad time to kill and a horrible right click that any semi-decent team can bait you into using to get a basically free kill against you. It's just so weird that this thing hasn't had any help recently. I have to put this in the C tier, unfortunately. The M60 is just a solid gun that is super adaptable, super forgiving, and can be insane in the hands of the right player. This is the weapon that I recommend every new heavy in the game use to get used to the class. And if you don't have the insane aim or game sense to use the S tier heavy weapons, using the M60 will be your next best option. And in the majority of ranks, except the very highest in the game, the M60 will probably feel like a top tier weapon. Great ammo, great damage. I'm gonna place it as an A tier weapon. Heavy was already feeling like a really good class this season with a lot of viable options, and that has never been more true with the addition of the Titan Revolver. This thing is probably the best ranged weapon that Heavy has ever gotten, and has some absolutely nasty time to kill shortening combos with Winch. But be warned, this gun is for aimers only, because if you miss a lot, then this weapon easily becomes really bad, and you are very susceptible to dives while reloading, so you have to be a pretty good heavy in the first place to get the most use out of it. But in the hands of a pro, this thing can make your gameplay insane in a way that no other heavy weapon currently can. S tier if you are a high diamond to ruby player, but probably just A tier if you're anyone else. The KS-23 has kinda lost its luster recently, as the Titan has shown up as the newer, cooler big brother. In fact, with the current state of the game, unless you really like the destruction mechanic that the KS-23 brings, there's basically no reason to run it over the Titan right now, which is a real shame because I've been hoping for a time where the KS-23 gets the spotlight, but that doesn't seem to be today. It's still decent, but there's just better options out there right now, so I can't really justify anything higher than the B tier at the moment. If Titan didn't exist, it'd probably be higher, but it does, so I have to keep it there. Now we have Lewis Gun, and how the mighty have fallen. A while ago, this thing was nerfed down into just a shadow of its former glory, and as the other heavy weapons have risen, the Lewis Gun has kinda just stayed the same. The M60 was pretty much better in every single way except for one particular area, and that was range. But now that the Titan and the Deagles are among the best picks in the game, there's really no reason to run the Lewis if you need range, and if you want an LMG, it's just the objectively worse option compared to the M60, which has more ammo and better time to kill. This thing is going to need some help to bring it out of the B tier for me. I really feel bad for Minigun right now. It's one of my favorite weapons on the heavy class, but we are in the middle of a poke heavy meta right now, and Minigun really suffers against that playstyle. If you can get the right lobby, this thing will absolutely eviscerate everybody you see, but because this thing struggles into range and a good Winchclaw player can really mess up your day, this thing has to go into the B tier for me because those are both extremely popular options right now. I wish I could put it higher as this is one of my favorite weapons, but it's just kind of getting diffed by a lot of things right now. It's just unfortunate that the current meta kind of counters Minigun so hard. The much more approachable higher tier pick on heavy is the SHAK, which has some of the best time to kills in the game and pairs very well into the current Winchclaw meta. It shreds at close range and is more reliable than something like the SA-12 at mid-range, but it doesn't quite have the sustain that the other heavy weapons do. Managing your ammo is really going to be the biggest challenge with this weapon, but if you can manage to do that, you've got a versatile gun that can shred at a variety of ranges and skill levels. I'm going to put this thing in the S tier. Y'all remember when Embark said they were going to rework the MGL something like 4 seasons ago? Yeah, I do. At this point, I think that's had to be an out-of-season April Fool's joke because this thing has barely been touched since then. It's an okay meme weapon for power shift, and if you're a diehard OTP with this, it can even be used in World Tour, but at mid to high level ranked, you're gonna get curb stomped using this weapon because it just has so many counters to it. One of them being Winchclaw, which is like the #1 heavy pick at the moment. I wish this weapon was good, but until a buff or that fabled rework comes along, almost everything in the game can kill easier and more efficiently. I'm gonna have to put it into the C tier. If you play the game casually, this weapon is going to be fine, but if you want to win, it's probably one of the last ones that I would pick. And before I get to the medium class, I just wanted to say that if you've made it this far, you'd probably like a lot of my other content too, so why not subscribe? The channel is getting pretty close to 40,000 subscribers, so if you'd like to help reach that goal and see more awesome educational and fun finals content, just hit that sub button. The P90 is probably one of the easiest hit scan weapons that Medium has ever gotten. The mag size for it is insane, it does pretty decent damage overall, and fills that niche of being easy to use but also still doing decent damage that Medium has been kind of missing for a while now. In my mind, it's kind of taken the place of AK of being the weapon to use if you just want pure consistency. And while the AK does have a bit better range, I feel like the P90 is just better this season overall. I would place it on the lower end of the A tier. It's not the best weapon if you're going for pure damage, but it does its job and it does it well. CL40 is a very interesting weapon. It's a decent counter pick and does very good against some of the more annoying weapons in the game like Riot Shield, but also significantly struggles against certain strategies as well. One of those things that it struggles against are good winch heavy players, which just so happens to be extremely popular right now. So similarly to the minigun, it's kind of a victim of being just not optimal against popular strategies. I'm going to have to place it in the B tier. It's decent as a swap weapon, but it's just so much of a feast or famine weapon, I can't justify it going much higher. Now, it's a little early in the season to completely say, but I'm going to be personally putting all my chips on Repeater right now. It just got a buff recently, which makes it more consistent versus heavies, and while I already thought this weapon was pretty good, it was sort of overshadowed by the Pike last season. But now that the Pike has been nerfed, this weapon really does have a chance to shine. Paired with the new heavy Revolver, I think this weapon could be absolutely insane in the hands of a team with very good aim, and I'm going to put it in the S tier. Model's in a spot right now where it's actually seeming to legitimately do better, especially with the ammo buff, and because it is a poke heavy meta at the moment, Model is reaping all of the benefits of that, but I do think that things like the Repeater still do overshadow it. But if you've got some insane movement and quick flicks to back it up, the Model isn't a bad choice at all this season. I'm going to place it on the lower end of the A tier, and I think that making the reload a bit better on this weapon could easily put it higher on the list. AK was previously my go-to pick for new players and people who wanted a more consistent weapon. I've always said that it needed a mag size buff for me to fully endorse it. But with the addition of the P90, I feel like the AK has fallen even more by the wayside, and it's just not going to perform quite as well as other options this season. If you're a casual player or just do World Tour, I think the AK is still a fantastic option, but it just hasn't really changed much, while a lot of other medium weapons have slowly overtaken it these past few seasons. I'd place it on the very top of the B tier. It's decent, but nothing truly noteworthy that makes it stand out next to other medium choices right now. FCAR is still, in my opinion, a pretty decent pick if you've got the aim to back it up. It has a really competitive time to kill versus lights and is pretty solid against the other classes. If you can handle the recoil, I'd say it's a solid weapon that can do well in pretty much every rank of the finals. I don't think it's the king of ARs, but I do think that it is an effective swap pick in a lobby that's full of lights, or if you just really aren't good with the FAMAS. I'd place it in the A tier. And now we've got FAMAS, the king of ARs for the past few seasons now. Its burst damage is very nice, the time to kill is pretty good, and the range is also decent, all making it a very good pick into higher tier lobbies. Along with having an excellent hipfire and easy to control recoil, there's really not much to ask for in the FAMAS, which puts it as the best AR, especially at the higher ranks of the game. I'm going to say it goes into the S tier for me. Pike got nerfed recently, and deservedly so, as it was pretty much the only medium weapon that was used in Diamond Ruby during Season 7, and now that it's not as dominant, other picks have room to breathe. It had a bug earlier this season that made the headshots deal a little bit more damage than it was supposed to, but now that has been fixed, and the Pike is back to normal. I'd say it's still a decent pick, and if you want to fully spec into a ranged comp, it's definitely not a bad choice, but personally, I think this season in particular, there's other weapons that are just more efficient. I'd place it in the low A tier. Riot Shield got a buff last season that made it actually kind of oppressive, and this season it's gotten a nerf, but even after that, it's still really decent. The biggest advantage to this thing right now is that the hitbox is all messed up, so the Riot Shield actually blocks a lot more than what is actually shown on the player, leading many to take shots at you only for them to be blocked by the invisible part of the Riot Shield and for you to get a free kill. It's kind of hard countered by certain weapons, but against a lot of others, it's really strong, and until the weird hitbox gets fixed, I'm going to put it up into the A tier. Dual blades are so close to actually being decent. They've gotten so many buffs over time, but all of them in the wrong place. The biggest issue is actually with the deflect of the blades being super inconsistent. It's not a client-sided deflect, meaning that by the time the server processes where you were looking, your target may have moved out of the way already. And because the whole gimmick of the dual blades is sending enemies shots back at them, if it can't even consistently do that, then there's no reason at all to run it over the Riot Shield, which just does its job so much better right now. I have to put this in the C tier, but if they ever fix the deflect consistency, then definitely expect this thing to go up a bit. Cerberus should theoretically do pretty decently right now. There's lots of poke weapons to fight against, and a dive-heavy weapon like Cerberus usually does pretty well against those sorts of guns. But with the DMAT nerf and heal beam buff this season, the Cerberus is definitely feeling a little less viable. It's still decent, and it's pretty good into certain strategies, but it's not enough of a mainstay weapon in my eyes to put it any higher than the B tier. Still good and quite fun, just not that good. Alright, I'm gonna say it. Are you ready, Revolver fans? Okay, here we go. People are sleeping on the Revolver. Yep, I said it. It's been a decent weapon, and now that Pike has been nerfed, I feel like it actually has a chance to shine. However, I still think the repeater is probably technically better in a lot of high-ranked play, but this thing definitely puts in work if you hit those headshots. The only real issue with this gun is how much it relies on you being within its optimal range, but outside of that, it's pretty good. I'll go and put it in the A tier. The XP54 is still an incredibly decent weapon that I think a lot of people just kind of stopped paying attention to. It seems like everyone saw the buffs to things like the 9.3R, and just decided that they were kind of done with the XP, but it's still quite good. Its consistency is, in my opinion, some of the best in the light class, and its damage is still quite respectable. I'd say it's a decent A tier option. The 9-3R has really had its glow up over time, going from one of the worst weapons on light to now being one of the best. It's super consistent, is good at close and far range, and works really well with a lot of the utility on the light class. In general, it's just a very solid weapon, and if I was to compare it to anything, it's basically the FAMAS for the light class, and as you probably saw earlier, the FAMAS is pretty good right now. Same thing with this weapon. I'm going to put it into the A tier. V9S is one of those guns which on paper is really good, but you have to really be good at aiming to really make use out of it. A lot of people screw up and don't know how to use this weapon, and in terms of light's guns, the skill ceiling for it is surprisingly high. But when you can get pretty much the same value on other weapons that are easier to use, the V9S does tend to lose its luster a little bit. In this list, I'm going to put the V9S into the B tier, because it's a pretty good weapon but requires a much higher level of aiming to get almost identical results to many other weapons on the class. An OTP for this weapon can definitely make it look A tier, but the level of dedication and consistency necessary to get to that point can just usually be done with many other weapons instead, much more easily. It is stylish as hell though. Alright, a lot of you are probably going to be surprised by this. The Matter is legitimately an absolute beast of a weapon and people are sleeping on it. It was one of the most powerful weapons on light last season, and nothing has really changed that much for this season. It's got really decent damage, has great sustain, and is ammo efficient, which is really nice to have. Pair it with dash and you can become ridiculously hard to kill. It's definitely a bit more of a skill check weapon, but if you can put some time into learning it, you'll definitely start to realize why this is a fantastic weapon on light and one of the best ones to use at high levels of play. It's going to go into the S tier. Double barrel is an interesting weapon because it's a very good pub stomp weapon, but once you go against high skill coordinated teams, it does become a lot harder to get value from. Double barrel usually takes advantage of people with no communication or bad positioning, which means that the higher up you get, the more this sort of weapon is naturally going to start performing worse. Still though, for 95% of players, this weapon is going to be great, so I'm going to be placing it over in the A tier, but it just doesn't have the viability of some other weapons to truly take it to the top. The sniper has definitely become much better than it used to be, and I even see it in Ruby lobbies once in a while, but to me, it feels like a very per map pick. It does quite well on maps like Seoul, Kyoto, and even Monaco, but in maps that are a little bit more close range focused, it does tend to do a little bit worse. While I think you can definitely make plays with it and do well, with how good healing still is and the amount of other impressive weapons on light, I feel that I can't justify a higher placement than B tier right now. It's decent, just nothing about it really makes it stand out against the current top picks. The throwing knives are really interesting too. They can be an absolute powerhouse of a weapon, and some players can make them look downright overpowered. But the biggest issue with them is consistency. Because of their nature as a projectile weapon you have to get direct hits with, sometimes this weapon just doesn't give the same value that other light weapons would in the same scenario. But there's a lot to like about these two, like never having to reload and the insane headshot damage. I am going to put these over into the A tier, but just the lack of consistency keeps me from putting them any higher. Sword is such a weird weapon because people tend to have very different opinions on it, and the skill gap for this weapon is huge. Many low-level sword players just kind of left-click with it, and that's about it, while high-level sword players can go flying across the map and make the thing look broken, but it's a lot harder to use than it might look. The issue with the sword is that a lot of the playstyle relies on people not knowing how to counter it, so while it can do well against a lot of players, if you know how to deal with it, it's really not that hard to take out. I'm going to place it over in the B tier. It's very flashy, but I think other weapons are better in terms of efficiency and consistency. Dagger, like the sword, can be really good against certain players and is one of those feast or famine type of weapons, but it's generally hard to get value from it the more skilled your opponent is. While the sword definitely has counters, in my opinion, the Dagger is even easier to counter, and I usually find most fights with Dagger players, even high-level ones, to be fairly easy. Sure, they might draw it out for a super long time, but I usually end up with much more kills on the Dagger player than they ever get on me. It's a very fun and niche weapon, one of my favorites, but I just can't vouch for its reliability anywhere outside of quick matches and World Tour and maybe up to Gold and Ranked. It's within the B to A tier if you're just against regular players, but against anyone who knows what they're doing, it quickly becomes C tier. ARN will probably always be a high elo staple because it lets light play far back from the action while still doing pretty decent damage. An excellent swap pick into longer range maps, I think the ARN is pretty solid, but it does struggle with consistency slightly if you take it onto some of those closer range maps. I'd place it up in the A tier as it's kind of a per map weapon, but if you get into the right map, it's very, very good. LH1 is basically back to its old power level from a few seasons ago, and for some reason, nobody's talking about it. If you're on M&K, it's not going to be the most insane thing ever, but if you're on controller, pick this thing up. It absolutely beams, and the only guns really contesting it pretty well right now are the Repeater and the Titan, which, while definitely pretty good, are, in my opinion, a little better to deal with than the pre-nerf Pike, which would destroy this thing pretty much every time. If you're an M&K player, I'd say this weapon is probably in the A tier, but on controller, I'd put it in the S tier. I'm sure you could get really, really good with this weapon on M&K too, but this weapon just, in general, on controller is very good. Despite the bow having really good potential, especially against teams that don't really know how to play against it, I think that many of the other light weapons perform a bit more consistently with other team comps. It's pretty decent, but compared to the tons of other options that light has right now, I personally think that there's more optimal choices. The damage is pretty good, but against shield heavy team comps or just teams with lots of healing, and remember, healing just got a buff, the bow can end up struggling. I think it's still a decent weapon, but I'd put it over in the B tier, because I feel that other light weapons just perform a little bit better against the current meta. And finally, we have the M11. I think weapons like this one do have a bit of a better chance to perform this season, as their more burst damage nature lets them get the chance to counter things like the Repeater and the Titan. The M11 has been pretty decent if you want good DPS, but the problem with it has always been its range being really not that great compared to many other weapons, and with how popular winch is right now, it's definitely more dangerous to be a light up close with an automatic. I'd say that in the right team comp, it can do quite well, but it's not versatile enough for me to consider it S tier, so it's going to go over in the A tier. And for all of you who just want to skip towards the end to see the final tier list, here you go. Just pause and look at them whenever, but at least leave me a sub before you head out, alright? I'd appreciate it. And that was my ranking for every weapon in Season 8 of the finals. I want to finish this off just by mentioning that I'm actually going to be live on Twitch right after this video is posted, playing the finals and doing giveaways, and the only thing you need to do to enter is just to be there when I do it, and that's it. If you missed the giveaway, don't worry, because I stream every Wednesday and the occasional Saturday, and I'll probably be doing more giveaways in the future. Alright, that's about all from me for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.